Good afternoon, everyone. I thought since you guys had a chance to go over your essays yesterday and we did not have a time to go through the lecture, I did the lecture in a video. Again, it's going to match the readings that you have in Blackboard and also the questions that you've done, just to provide you with a little more detail and a little more clarification. So the first thing with Iran, we know they're not in a good geopolitical position. Most of the oil profits are going to be controlled by the British. The British also have troops inside of Iran in order to protect the Suez Canal. And again, the Suez Canal is an economic benefit for the British because it is going to permit them to trade a lot faster, in particular with their colony of India. At the same time, Iran is a little bit nervous about the Bolsheviks in Russia that are right on the northern border, and they're afraid that the Bolshevik revolution might start to spread into Iran because they're in a very, very weak position. So Iran is going to decide to sign the Anglo-Persian Agreement, which basically says that Iran is going to supply munitions and also equipment for the British Army. And so the British Army is going to be there, and they're going to provide money for them to keep Iran safe. Iran also is going to be given a $2 million sterling loan for necessary reforms. Obviously, that loan is going to have to be paid back, which means they're going to be indebted to the British. They also are going to reduce their custom tariffs, so it's going to be cheaper for the British to sell their imported goods inside of Iran, and they're going to permit surveying of the country and building additional railroads, so it's going to make it a lot easier for the British to control any type of uprisings that may occur. So basically, after these provisions and the Anglo-Persian Agreement, Iran is going to basically become a British colony. Obviously not good for Iran, which is going to then lead to our first leader. So we have Reza Pahlavi, who's going to overthrow the government in 1925. He basically is going to start to nationalize the oil industry, starts to introduce a series of economic, social, and political reforms to gain control of the country. A lot of those reforms are going to be done through the White Revolution, which is going to be aiming at weakening the power of the British. It's going to redistribute land, and also state-owned factories are going to be sold to individuals, so now they become private enterprises. The Shah also is going to solidify power by gaining support for the peasants and also the working classes. These were the people that were not making a lot of money in the oil industries, and now they are going to, hopefully, under privatization, be able to make a better economic living. The British are going to be relatively concerned about this, obviously concerned about access through the Suez Canal, and then also concerned about maintaining their access to the oil fields. So they are going to have to deal with Pahlavi regardless of their current situation. He wants to try to renegotiate treaties with the British in order to basically gain more control of the oil industry, but the British refuse to negotiate. So Pahlavi is then going to turn to the Russians and is going to sign the Persian-Russian Agreement in 1941. Obviously, for Great Britain, this does not look good. They're not really happy about this move whatsoever. They realize that this is not a puppet government that they've established, and they do want to be able to gain more control of the situation going on inside of Iran. So they actually are going to support a coup attempt, which is actually going to be led by his son, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, and he is going to overthrow the government. Mohammad Pahlavi is going to agree to cooperate with the Allies and also to keep Iran under British control. All right, our next empire is going to be the Ottoman Empire, and as we know, the Ottoman Empire is going to be on the losing side of World War I, and as a result of that, it's going to be broken apart. Many people in the empire thought they were going to be gaining independence, and again, that's the same story as everyone else after World War I. The only difference is they are the losing side, and as a result of that, they are going to be broken apart. So we are going to start to see resistant movements form. The biggest one is going to be led by Mustafa Kemal. He was going to lead the National War of Independence. He's going to win a lot of military victories, which eventually leads other countries to sign peace treaties with him. Those countries are going to include Russia, Armenia, Georgia, and also Greece and France. So he rules for a little bit, but the big person that's going to come out to be the leader of Turkish independence is going to be Kemal Ataturk. He is going to initiate a series of reforms that's going to change Turkey to a modern-day country. So the first one is going to be dealing with religion. Ataturk is going to depose the caliph, so your religious leaders are no longer in control. He's going to close all religious courts and schools. He's going to prohibit wearing headscarves by public employees. He's going to abolish the minister of canon law and also pious foundations. The call to prayer is going to be changed, so it's now going to be in Turkish and no longer in Arabic. And all of this is going to be because many people believe that the reliance on religion was stopping Turkey from becoming a modern country. The problem is that the vast majority of the population are going to be Islamic and they're going to support traditional ideas and not Western modernization. The other issue besides religion is he's going to take up social issues as well. Women are given equal rights to men and the right to vote. Again, public employees are not permitted to wear headscarves and have to wear modern dress. Everyone has to adopt a European last name. We also are going to see that the Gregorian calendar is adopted, and Sunday becomes the official day of rest instead of Friday, which was traditional according to Islam. Roman letters and numbers also are going to be adopted with international hours and measurements. In terms of your judicial system, we're going to close all of our religious courts and replace them with European secular legal systems. Everything's going to be based on the new Turkish Civil Code, the penal statute, and also the trade law book. And again, women are going to gain more rights and be allowed to be elected to parliament. In terms of your education and culture, universal educational system is going to be adopted that's based upon the European system. We're going to get rid of all of our religious schools, which are basically those madrasas. Our secondary and post-secondary education is going to be created with the university system and a high school system. And again, that's all going to be regulated by the government. In terms of your economic system, we're going to get rid of our large land owners and redistribute land to the peasants. Each farm is then going to be divided into certain sections based upon what will be best for that environment. So animals, cultivation, and also development. Industries are going to be built with an incentive system to boost production, very, very similar to what we talked about in China. The only problem is the same thing we saw in China. Majority of workers here are going to be unskilled and cannot find employment. So our state-run enterprises are only going to make up 40% of all the manufacturing. And then we find out that our private companies, what we just made, are not very efficient. And the state actually has to subsidize the companies in order for them to stay in running. And that's going to end up resulting in a reduction of profits. And also it's going to result in a reduction of funds for the government. All right, our next one is going to be the creation of the State of Israel. It's going to be seen as a triumph for the vast majority of international countries based upon the results of the Holocaust and also World War II and growing anti-Semitism inside of Europe. But for the Arabs, it's going to be seen as a catastrophe. Arabs did not believe that Europeans were needed in order to modernize their area. So the whole entire mandate system and basically just the creation of Israel, which is going to be seen as a Western and U.S. encroachment of their area, should not be permitted. So a lot of the secular groups are going to believe that modernization can occur. However, you just need to remove religion from the issue, and you also need to gain control of your oil industry, and then countries will be able to modernize without the help of Europe. So we know from our mandate period that Great Britain was in control of the Mandate of Palestine. We know that we have very slow and then increasing Jewish immigration into the state of Palestine during the 1920s all the way up to the 1940s and then through to the end of the war. We know Great Britain doesn't know what to do with it. They try to solve the problem with a number of white papers and also with a whole bunch of different commissions. None of it really works. The British eventually just sort of throw their hands up at the whole entire situation and turn it over to the newly created United Nations. 1947, the United Nations comes out with a proposal in order to partition Palestine between the Jordan River Valley and the Mediterranean Sea, and that area becomes a Jewish state. And then you also are going to have an economically free Arab state. Jerusalem is going to be an international independent city. The division is going to drastically increase the amount of Jewish land from 7% to 55%, and Palestinians are only going to receive 45% of the land. And if you go back all the way to a couple of days ago, and we took a look at our immigration patterns and also took a look at the number of the population, this does not support the population. The mass majority of people inside of this area are still going to be Arabs and not Jewish, which is going to lead to our conflict. Arab governments and also Palestinian Arabs are going to completely reject the partition plan, and as a result of that, all surrounding Arab nations are going to invade Palestine the day after Israel is declared independent. That is going to lead us to a series of Arab-Israeli wars. Our first Arab-Israeli war is going to come in 1948, and that's going to be immediately after we have our independence declared. For Israel and its supporters, this is seen and called as the War of Independence. This is in defense of Israel. This is in defense of religion. But for Palestinian Arabs and for their supporters, this is going to again be called the catastrophe. It's seen as the destruction of Palestinian society, the establishment of Jewish rule, and the creation of hundreds of thousands of Arab Palestinian refugees. We are going to see over 725,000 refugees that are going to be created. A lot of them are going to leave their homes because they do not want to live under a Jewish-controlled state. Others are going to leave because they're forced to leave, and then others are going to be expelled by the Israeli army. We are going to see multiple UN attempts to try to stop the fighting, cause ceasefires, and try to get agreements signed. However, it does not work. Basically, what you had going on is when Jewish immigrants first came into Palestine, they had to form militia groups because they were attacked sometimes by Palestinian Arabs who were displaced. They were tenant farmers who were displaced by the landowner who sold the land, and now these people don't have a place to live and they don't have a livelihood, and a lot of times they would attack the Jewish immigrants that were moving in. As a result, Jewish settlements ended up creating well-organized militia groups. These militia groups then become the base of the Israeli army. So when this war occurs, Israel is able to defend themselves. They turn their militia groups into a unified fighting force. So Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Iraq are going to invade, and they are going to realize they are not going to win. They then are going to impose an economic boycott on Israel and all states that support Israel. The boycott is going to have positive and also negative results. For a negative result, Syria and Jordan are going to lose their oil refineries. They have to move a pipeline that was going through Iraq. Jordan no longer has access to the sea, and as a result, the countries are going to lose a whole bunch of income. The flow of goods are going to be interrupted, and they're going to see a decrease in tourism. For Israel, this actually becomes a positive. Their economic system that now has to be developed is not dependent upon their Arab neighbors. It is dependent upon the rest of the world. Israelites, again, are not very well equipped in our first Arab-Israeli war, but they are successful. They are able to not only keep the land that was already awarded to them by the UN, but they're also going to be able to gain key Arab areas in Galilee, the Palestinian coast, and the western section of Jerusalem. Eventually, the UN is going to get the two sides to agree to a ceasefire, and basically Israel was granted all the land that they had before the war and all the land that they gained during the war. So this just leads to even more Palestinian Arabs, refugees. All right, next country, Egypt. Egypt is going to be ruled by a dynasty before the arrival of the British, and basically, again, like some of our other Middle Eastern countries, their desire is to quickly modernize and also industrialize. So, like other Middle Eastern countries as well, Egypt is going to borrow money from Europe in order to do that. And again, like other Middle Eastern countries, the idea is that as they improve their industry and they improve manufacturing, they'll make consumer products, they'll be able to sell those products, which makes a profit, and then they'll be able to repay all the loans with the profits they made. However, the manufacturing does not work, which means they don't have money, which means they cannot repay the loans. The country is going to be close pretty much to economic disaster. However, Egypt does have the Suez Canal. As a result of that, Great Britain is going to end up giving them a whole bunch of money to forgive all of their foreign debt. And Great Britain basically then is going to gain access and control of the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal itself was built, a modern day version of it was started by Napoleon, although we do have a couple hundred years ago an attempt to build the canal. Both times, a couple hundred years ago, and then the ones built by Napoleon had some environmental challenges that they were not able to overcome. So it's not until you actually have the French coming into the area that the French are actually going to be able to visualize this idea of a canal. For France, the canal is going to be important because, again, the British Empire was everywhere and it was a big, large economic empire. France has a much smaller empire, but if they build a canal, they can control the British economic system, and they'll be able to charge the British access to the canal so they can get to their jewel of their empire, which is going to be their colony of India. So what we're going to have is Napoleon trying to build the canal, but a whole bunch of production problems, which means that he is not going to be able to actually finish the canal. It's not going to be until the mid-1800s that you have a French engineer with the British support able to actually build the canal, finance it, and so that the canal actually becomes something that we can use and work. So the Great Britain is going to be given rights to operate the Suez Canal for 99 years, and eventually the canal was going to be transferred over to the Egyptians.